The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
I'm Dr. Sky, and welcome once again to the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. As we like to say, WABC, the crown jewel of radio, heard in 173 countries in all 50 states, beaming out of New York City, the nation, the world, and out to the cosmos, and I'm even confident all the way deeper into the universe. Thank you for joining us for our first edition of our Sky Report for October Skies 2025. Did you know that October skies across much of the nation in the Northern Hemisphere, and many nations in the Northern Hemisphere, bring about some of the clearest skies of the year? Myself here in Phoenix, Arizona, we're just getting over a rather weak monsoon, called, in my words, a nonsoon, but hopefully your skies will be clear. Let's take that journey as we continue to move out from planet number 3, as Carl Sagan described it, as the pale blue dot. And here's what you can expect as we move on to the position of Earth's nearest neighbor, the moon. We start off the month of October, finding out that the moon is moving on from its waxing phase to a beautiful full phase on Monday, October the 6th. Now, many of you have heard of a harvest moon. And what is a harvest moon? It's the full moon that lies closest to the date of the autumnal equinox, or the beginning of fall. Fall began, as many of you might know, back on September the 21st, so the closest full moon to it would wind up being in early October. So that date happens to be on the 6th at 11:48 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So a quick history of the harvest moon. Why is it called that? In days when we were much more of an agricultural society, and with crops being at their plentiful time for harvesting, the light of the moon, the full moon, would help farmers to harvest crops. But astronomically, this particular full moon, the harvest moon, rises very shortly that is, after sunset. So simple English, we find out that this moon would be higher in the sky. Normally a moon takes about 50 minutes each night, rising later. The beauty of that full moon is in abundance, so don't miss it. In days of antiquity, going back in, let's say, the 1920s and 30s, did you know there were great harvest moon balls, where women dressed up in beautiful couture gowns, gentlemen in tuxedos, and bands played, and food flowed, and drinks flowed in this most amazing event. So simply, you can see the beautiful full harvest moon. Then after that, the moon wanes. It moves on to its last quarter on the 13th of October, and finally, we get a new moon on the 21st, and we'll talk more about the benefits of that new moon on the 21st. Then the lunar cycle continues. Look for that thin sliver of moonlight starting on the evening sky of about the 22nd due south-southwest. And then we move on to first quarter on the 29th of October, just around the time of Halloween. But for planets, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the activity is now centered in the early evening and early morning skies. Let's begin with the early evening. The original ring planet, as I like to call it, Saturn, came to opposition during the latter part of September. What does that mean? It means when a planet or an object is at opposition, it rises at sunset, and it, of course, stays into the sky until it sets around sunrise. So we find out that the planet Saturn is easy to see. How do you see it? Look to the southeast. The object that you see that's probably about 10 or 15 degrees high, not super bright, is the planet Saturn. If you look at it in a telescope, you'll notice that the ring system is barely visible. So every 15 years, we go through the orbital plane of Saturn's rings, meaning if you hold your hand at arm's length and see it with the thinnest part of your hands without the fingers all showing, then move your hand up and down, the ring system tips as we go around and as Saturn goes around the sun. Saturn takes an incredible 29 years to race around that track as if it was a horse track in a racetrack. We go around naturally, in 1 year. So looking at Saturn, you may get to see with a decent-sized telescope a ring system that's maybe deployed 5 or 6 degrees. We're beginning to see the southern section of the ring as years go on. So don't miss Saturn, a beautiful sight deep in the constellation of Aquarius, the water bearer. But for other objects, you probably want to look into the eastern part of the sky right after midnight, because Jupiter rises, the god of gods, and the most magnificent planet. And in the early morning sky, Venus is still there. As we look into our skies, we see it into the north-northeast before sunrise. The blazing object Venus is an incredible object. Did you know, and I've often mentioned this on the Dr. Sky Experience, that under certain conditions, if let's say you live in an area where snow is pretty much prominent, you can actually see your shadow by the brilliance of Venus. Now you may wonder, how could that be? Well, if you're in a snowy field because of the whiteness of snow, and Venus was, of course, you're staring at it and you turned around, under super dark conditions, you might get to see your shadow, not just like the moon would cast your shadow or the sun in the daytime, but the planet Venus itself, which is quite interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, a good opportunity now to talk about a pair of binoculars. Now, I get this question on the Dr. Sky Experience all the time, and you can email me with your questions at just drsky@wabcradio.com. I'm there for you to answer questions, and no question is foolish. I mean, we get questions and help people out. That's what we do to explore the mysteries of the universe. So, a pair of binoculars, let's talk about it for a moment. You use both eyes. Hopefully your eyes are in good health. And even if they're not, you at least have the ability to see maybe better than what you would with the naked eye. So binoculars come in various forms. The easy ones you can hold in your hand. Remember, if you had a pair of binoculars that had a number that says 10 with an X and a 50, 10 means the power, the number on the left, and the number on the right, in that case 50, means diameter of the little lens in the front. That's 50 millimeters. So did you know that they're 25.4 millimeters in an inch? So a 10 by 50 binocular would magnify 10 times, which your eye can see normally. And it would have a piece of glass, say 2 inches almost in diameter. That's interesting. So binoculars are great. You can use them for many other events, sporting events, whatever, what have you, bird watching. But for astronomy, believe it or not, it might save you a lot of time and trouble if you're not interested, nor can you afford, no disrespect, one of these very large computerized telescopes that you have to go out in the middle of the night and set the thing up, and then all of a sudden the clouds come. So binoculars, very simply, are fantastic. So let's also talk about some milestones in the month of October. It's a very important new month in the calendar for discussing space, the history of space, and also something to do with the first aircraft to fly faster than the speed of sound. So let's talk about space. The Russians launched the Sputnik back in October. That is the 4th of 1957, the first little artificial moon. And then if we really dig into the story, we find out that Chuck Yeager actually broke the sound barrier back on October the 14th of 1947 with the glamorous Glennis, that particular rocket plane. So if you have questions about all these things that are going on in the science of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, you're at the right place here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Proud to say the Dr. Sky Experience broadcasts live midnight Friday into 2 a.m. Saturday Eastern Daylight Time, and also Saturday night midnight into 2 a.m. Sunday Eastern Daylight Time. And of course, as we move into the fall and the end of daylight saving time, those times will be an hour later. Naturally, check your time zones. But I saved the best for last. If you've never had an opportunity to see a decent meteor shower, mark the nights of October 20th and 21st on your calendar. And however far this particular podcast and broadcast reaches, remember, that is going to be the night and the peak into the morning of the 21st. That is, if you're looking on the evening of the 20th, after midnight, you're going naturally into the 21st. Look to the eastern sky after midnight for the constellation Orion the Hunter. We've often talked about on the Dr. Sky Experience the upper left star called Betelgeuse, which is a supergiant star some 500 light years away. So the meteor shower Orionids come a few degrees to the left of Betelgeuse, and if you're staring at that, and Orion rises, let's say, a little after midnight, that's your zero point of where these meteors are coming out. What are they from? Historically, they're from the first periodic comet ever discovered, Comet Halley. Remember, we've called it mankind's comet in the past because it was the average lifetime, say 76 years. Now we live a lot longer, thank goodness. But that comet, it comes around the sun every 76 years. It's been doing it since days of antiquity. So if you cannot be around in 2061 or 2062 when Halley's returns, then obviously looking for these debris particles that come from the tail of comets like Comet Halley, the Orionid should be good, and here's why. Because during this particular time, the moon is near new, and bright moonlight is the enemy of meteor showers, saying it mildly. So get set for hopeful clear skies the night of the 20th of October into the 21st. On either side of that date, you may see a few, but the peak of that shower is supposed to be early in the morning on the 21st. We're proud, and ladies and gentlemen, very proud to be here on the Dr. Sky Experience on Talk Radio 77 WABC. And we look forward to hearing from you as we talk about the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, and so much more. Clear skies, good health, and if you have those questions, give us a shout on an email. And also, tune in to the Dr. Sky Experience. I think you'll find it quite interesting, and you can call in on the national hotline at 1-800-848-9222. Clear skies.